Today's episode of Conversations with Purrr is proudly brought to you by Tiger Purrr Chai, chef-crafted, made from pure, natural ingredients, designed to activate your power within. When you hang out with Mr. Andrew Morello, you know you're going to have some fun. And today we're going to have some fun. Many know Andrew, affectionately known as Morello, as the first winner of The Apprentice here in Australia, a reality show that judges the business skills of a competitive group of contestants. Since then, he has clocked so many more achievements and accolades as an awarded entrepreneur, investor, author, advisor, speaker, coach, mentor, and the greatest reward of all, father. Having spent 10 years working alongside Mark Burris, building out the Yellow Brick Road, Mr. Morello now also sits at the head of business at the Entourage. The Entourage is a global movement to support the success of other entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors to help them reach their full potential in business and in life. What I love about Andrew the most is that despite all his success, he remains grounded in his most enlivened, energized, and authentic self. He lives life large, but never forgets where he came from and what it took to get here. It's clear that Mr. Morello has a massive personality with a massive heart. And I can't wait to dive deeper into this conversation with Purrr to uncover and discover what makes this extraordinary man tick. Oh, Peachy in the middle. Hello. Welcome.
Great to be here.
I love this colour.
It's actually my colour.
It is indeed.
It's my cobalt blue.
Yes.
There we go. I'm very excited about this.
I would like to pour you some Tiger Purrr chai.
Okay,
I
great.
hear you love chai.
Yes.
Welcome and thank you so much for your time.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheese. Scrumptious.
It is, isn't it?
It is. It is. I'm looking forward to breaking into my Tiger Purrr chai.
Yes, anti-ordinary chai for anti-ordinary people.
Correct.
I think you're freaking anti-ordinary.
Oh, I'm very anti-ordinary.
In fact, I think you're magnetic as fuck. We call it, magnetic as fuck here. And so you have this incredible unbridled energy. You're so charismatic. You're so magnetic. Is it something that you were born with?
It's a great question, actually. Like I think there's always a conversation around nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm I've read a lot of literature about it. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of very smart people and like people like yourself, even having conversations with you the other night. It was you understand there is, and I got to meet your beautiful daughter.
Yes.
And you can see that yes. There's an element of that, of the nature in that, she's your daughter. You can definitely tell that. But the nurture is the environment that's fostered. Yeah. And I had a very, for those who don't know my background, I had a very beautiful, loving environment with, two very beautiful parents that were migrants to Australia, similar to probably a bit of your story as well. And
they were boat people too?
They were boat people too in
Yes.
the 50s, coming from Italy, so under Sir Robert Menzies. So, they just fostered an environment of unconditional love. Awesome. And I think that unconditional love created that environment where I could flourish and be the magnetic person or the charismatic person.
I grew up with conditional love. my upbringing wasn't so beautiful.
Oh, no, well,
probably the opposite, actually.
So
you were saying that your parents, your father in particular, taught you tolerance and forgiveness and compassion, and he'd always be so kind and welcome the homeless people. So I'm hearing that a lot of that nurture that comes in as well.
Yeah, so both my mum and dad. So my father, it's interesting, my uncle just passed away recently, and a lot of people came out of the woodwork, not in a bad way, in a nice way. Obviously, through COVID, we hadn't seen a lot of people, and these people would come to the funeral, and they were telling stories about my uncle and my dad, and obviously my dad's still alive, so I got to listen to the stories getting told to my father. Yeah. And very, very successful people that were homeless kids, were troublemakers, were criminals, back in Moonee Ponds. that are very, very successful now. People in high roles at big companies. They started their career at the corner of Pascoe Road and Buckley Street, Moonee Ponds, with my father.
Yep.
You know, my father opened his first service station there, 1972, I believe.
How many service stations did he have?
He had a few service stations. So they were BP. They were Amicos originally. Then they went into BPs, and then just to prove a point to BP, he went and opened up a Caltex just to remind BP that they didn't have the stranglehold on him. So he taught me beautiful things around that as well. Around just sticking it to the man a little bit and just, stepping outside your comfort zone and being a little bit different. But, both my mum and dad had a pretty tough childhood. So it was a really, really beautiful thing that they fostered. And I think that's what forced them and made them want to foster an environment where my brother, my sister and I could really, rise to the occasion and be the people that we wanted to be.
Yeah, amazing. And so you worked in the business as well?
We did.
What did you do?
So I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. And I feel sorry for people. I tell this story all the time because I love it. But if you've heard this story before, I apologise. But they... I was there pumping petrol, cleaning toilets, stocking shelves, and I still remember my brother was like he was like 15 and he was like running the business, and we were like 8, my cousin and I, and my brother had checklists and procedure manuals, and he was 15 years old. So I had a great role model as a business operator, being my brother, and he's a very successful business operator himself with a company called Jealous Craig down in Melbourne. But he was like, my father allowed my brother at 15 to pretty much run the business.
Yeah.
So, my dad was a migrant, and, even though he, could read and write English, he went to basically, I think, Form 2 or Form 3, which is the equivalent of Year 8 or Year 9 now, and then, moved into mechanical repairs and went to a technical school. So he wasn't overly educated, but, he fostered an environment where my brother felt, that's where he earned his stripes as well. So my brother was more the operations guy, and my cousin and I were the hard work, the brunt work.
And the people person.
And the people, yeah. So, and look, I think the service station was a really good environment to foster that, right? So it's like, you get all walks of life. You get people driving in with the Mercedes-Benz, but then you get people driving in with their beaten up bomb. And my dad taught us to treat everyone equally. He said, never judge a man by how much money he's got or what nationality he is or what religion he is. Judge him by how hard he works.
Yeah.
So my mother and father fostered that in us, and it really forced us to, in a good way, to really, get to understand people. And I still remember my dad had Jehovah's Witnesses working for him. He had Muslims working for him. He had Asians working for him. He had Italians working for him. He had Aussies working for him. So he really fostered an environment where he was like, you need to give people an opportunity, and and even when they stuffed up, sometimes he gave them a second opportunity. Which was very rare for a Sicilian-born Italian who came on a boat to Australia. So traditionally they were quite strict, but my dad was very open-minded. I was very, very lucky to see that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I too grew up in an entrepreneurial environment. My parents had a video library, an ice cream parlor, a restaurant, a cafe, and a driving school on the side. And we provided the child labor. So I worked full time at the age of 7, right?
Yeah, correct.
And I think every child should be thrown in to hold their own at an early age as possible.
Yes.
And so they have that incredible sense of confidence
Yep.
and be able to stand up for themselves. I call it street wisdom.
100%.
It's so important.
It's it's an education, in I think understanding people, which is the most important part. Because at the end of the day, whether it was the driving school, or the video library, or the restaurant or whatever it is, we're in the we're in the business of people. I always say to people. So I go to whenever I'm up on stage or whenever I'm advising or coaching, I say what business are we in? It's interesting. It's interesting. Mark Burris told me this story that Kerry Packer asked him that. And it's a story that Mark often tells, and he explains that when he went into Kerry's office, he said, "Mark, what business are you in?" And he's like, "Home loans."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, what business are you in?" He's like, "Finance." He's like, "No, what business are you in?" And Mark's looking at him gobsmacked, like, "What are you talking about? It's called Wizard Home Loans. Our first business was his original business." And he goes, "Home loans." And he's like, "No, Kerry Packer turns around and says, you're in the business of people.
Yeah.
People and dreams.
Yep.
And he said, like, once you realise that, the rest of it becomes a reality, whether it's the experience in a beautiful restaurant like this, whether it's the experience of getting a home loan and buying your first home, or whether it's an experience of getting your driver's license, and that's a beautiful romantic experience for a lot of people. So you need to understand you're not just providing a service, you're providing an experience.
Yeah. My first experience of you clearly being a people person. So I was invited to speak at an elite, one of the more exclusive private dinners for the Entourage group. What, there were 20, maybe 20
Yeah,
or
20,
so?
that's the elite group. Yeah.
And so we were at a restaurant in Woolloomooloo, and I got there, and man, you gave me the biggest stare down. You were sitting on the right-hand corner, and you're
It
like...
was an affectionate stare down, though.
You're like staring me down like this, and I'm like, you can stare away, man. I know what you're about.
I'll tell you, it was an affectionate stare down there.
But for me, it was sussing me out, but also in the most affectionate way for your people.
Yes.
That's what I read from it. And
a lot of those people that are in that group, that they're not our clients anymore. They've become our friends. I've been to their christenings. I've been to their weddings. I've emceed their weddings. I was there when they've had their kids, and when their kids have their birthdays. So they've certainly become very much a part of our family, and I look at my close circle of friends, the people I've travelled around the world with, the people I've gone to Cambodia with, the people I've gone to, that I invite to my family functions, my son's birthdays and that, and most of them have come from, my time at the Entourage, and those clients have become very close friends. So,
I sussed that out. I mean, as much as you were staring me down, I was like sussing you out too, man.
I did come and give you a hug straight after that, so there we go.
It was very clear that the culture there is, there's a deep sense of love.
Yes.
And protection, and you're all looking out for yourselves.
Yes.
And over dinner, a couple of days ago, Andrew, you said something that really resonated with me, and you said, life is all about the people we meet and what we can create with them.
Yes.
For me, having such an entrepreneurial spirit, I love collaborating. I love making the invisible visible. What else can we create together? Yeah. And so prior to The Apprentice,
yes,
you had a lot of people skills, and working with Mark Boris, it was all about relations and people and all of that. And I asked you, why do you think you won The Apprentice? Because clearly you are known as the underdog where everyone else had this formal education in business and all of that. And do you remember what you said to me?
I was a couple of ones in at that point. But quote me, and then I'll expand.
I love this, because this is where the street wisdom comes in, the street smarts.
Yeah.
And you said, how did I think I won The Apprentice? It was because I was suited up. I'd done my meditation, and I swam before the film crew even came.
Correct. I was prepared very early, and I still remember that. That's a beautiful property, that 14A Bunya Parade in South Coogee, where we got to film it.
Yes. Fred Shabasta's
house.
Correct. He's been on this podcast.
Great. So Fred's house now. So when he bought it, I did ring him and say, mate, I did live there for 10 weeks. You can go and check out my room. Well, there's probably some skeletons in the closet. So there we go. But look, I think that's a pertinent point. I think preparation is very, very important, whether you're preparing for your own business and whether I'll give you a prime example. I went for dinner the other night as well to a friend's restaurant, Aurazio's, down in Bondi, and I've been with Aurazio before when he's finishing. He's been at a function and he's hosted and he's been the sous chef there till 2 a.m, and then 7 a.m. in the morning I'm walking through Bondi, and there he is already in the restaurant prepping. Yeah. Right now it's like, you could sit there and say there's two sides of that, and I said to him, you should be able to train other people up to do that for you, and he said yes, but right now because they've just reopened, he's like, I need to make sure it is world class. And this was on a Tuesday. It wasn't like he's prepping for a massive Friday night or a Saturday night. that's how passionate he is about it. And so I think,
Yeah.
you know, and I try and surround myself with passionate people, e.g. like yourself, and I try and find myself with people that are at the top of their game. Doesn't need it to be financially, it could be mentally or emotionally or spiritually. Like I still remember, like, not that I'm overly religious anymore, but I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I had a priest, and he was a great priest. And, like, you know, I know people have got different opinions of the Catholic Church, but it was interesting. At my 16th birthday, I invited the priest to my birthday.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's like all the guys were there, and they're in the back laneway, like,
Why did you
smoking
embrace
a little
him?
doobie. And
Why
they're
did you invite him? Because he was a cool dude.
I invited him because of that he was at the top of his game around
Yeah.
his, like, spiritualism, and he was very good at helping young people understand their spiritualism. He didn't push a religious agenda; he pushed a spiritual agenda.
Yes.
And I really appreciated that as a 16-year-old. You know, when you're starting to read books and you're starting to, I started early. Like I read the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I read, Deepak Chopra's The 7 Spiritual Laws when I was like 16.
Yeah.
The Alchemist. Someone bought me The Alchemist when I was 15. I grew up in a family where we're fairly conscious human beings. My brother already had big business and life coaches. My sister had business and life coaches. So, like, I grew up in an environment where the motivational books were already around me. And it's like you could see a scenario like that, being the Catholic Church, which is quite a strict institution.
Yeah.
And he could have conformed and become quite a strict, mentor, or quite a strict, influencer of these young minds. But rather, he was like, okay, how can I help these kids to actually find their spiritualism rather than their religion?
Yeah.
And maybe they'll come back to their religion, maybe they won't. And, I probably became less religious, but he at least provided an environment where I felt confident enough to be able to have him as a friend, speak, in confidence with him. And I admitted to things that I did wrong. Like, I said, like, and it was great to be able to have that person you can tell it to. And especially coming from quite a strict institution. So, like, try and find people that sometimes are a little bit outside the box.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't necessarily always have to be the guy who's made $100 million or, the guy who drives the fancy car or the guy who's got the big business. Sometimes it could be, like, we spoke about Geraldine Cox the other night, Order of Australian Medal awardee. I've been going over to Cambodia with her for the last 10 years. I have some of my best conversations with her, over a bottle of wine, either in Cambodia or when she's in Australia doing fundraising and so forth. We might go for a dinner and, she's in her 70s. This woman's happy to sit there till 2 a.m, drinking wine with you. And
We've had a couple of dinners
correct,
here.
and she's an amazing woman, right? So it's like,
Determined.
Correct. So look, she doesn't have any money to herself, but she's created such a beautiful following, and there's 712 kids between 2 sites now, and sadly they had a 3rd site, and that obviously during COVID there were some challenges there, but her contribution to humanity outweighs any amount of money anybody's going to make.
Yeah. So a priest at your 16th birthday.
Yes. And it was funny because the boys were at the back in the laneway in Moonee Ponds smoking a joint, and they came out and they're like, bro, the priest is at your birthday. And I'm like, yeah, man. And they're like, why? And I'm like, I invited him. They're like, and he came out and he was watching him smoke the joint. He didn't tell him off.
Yeah.
He didn't yet. And he saw kids drinking and stuff, and he didn't try and sway them. If he came out there and tried to, to try and sway these kids off, they're not going to listen to him. So he understood that they're 16, they're experimenting with their life, and he won the hearts and minds. And he was a great priest. Ironically, I think I told you the other night, he's the priest that left the priesthood, and obviously nobody knew where he went. And ironically, he met a woman, and got married and had a baby. So
good for him.
Good for him.
Good
correct.
For him.
Like, I'm not going to get into the politics or religion too deep today. But
I believe unconventionality and creativity is the new name of the relationship game.
I think it's the future, right? So I think it's a constant evolution of humanity, and I understand traditions and the old ways, and I understand that. But I think we live in this conscious world now, and this modernization where if we don't evolve, if these institutions don't evolve, they'll become redundant.
That's
we're
right.
already seeing that. In the last census, Australia was traditionally a Christian and Catholic country. In the last census, 50% of Australia said they were atheist.
Yeah.
So, so obviously if an institution like that doesn't evolve, or an educational institution, you look at some of the schools and the way they teach kids, like, if they don't embrace entrepreneurialism at high schools now, I think kids are going to get disenchanted. Yeah. Like, not everybody wants to go be a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant.
Yeah.
That's just a reality.
It's when I think of you, I think of the phrase freedom from rigidity.
That's a beautiful term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Morello.
Yeah.
Freedom from rigidity.
Yeah, it actually sounds like a pasta. There we go. So, it's correct. It's some exotic dish.
Hey, Moonee Ponds.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
What's Moonee Ponds famous for?
Three
things.
Do you remember what they are?
Underbelly.
Underbelly, correct. Series 1.
Andrew Morello.
Yeah, that's number 4. That's the 4th thing. Dame Edna Everage and the Cox Plate. It's the second richest race in the country. So gambling,
Yeah.
a drag queen, and Underbelly Series 1
gangsters.
and gangsters. So the good news is I survived, and I live in Rose Bay now. So the good news is I survived.
Yeah, that's where the street wisdom
Correct.
comes in. I grew up in the streets at Cabramatta.
Correct. Correct.
Tell us about that.
So it was interesting, and when we filmed The Apprentice, as you mentioned, I didn't have the academia, and Mark made quite a beautiful comment, and I still remember I had a tear in my eye watching it, and I was like, when I watched the back, and even when he said it, and he said, you've got a degree, you've got an MBA, you've got a doctorate, and I said, no, mate, I've got nothing, and he's like, you do from the back streets of Moonee Ponds. And I think, Mark growing up, obviously, in, the western suburbs of Sydney, we had a very similar, I think, upbringing. Like Moonee, for those who are listening today or watching this, like I know Moonee Ponds is gentrified now, and medium house prices are $2.5 million or $3 million. But when we got there in the 1950s, it was a very different place. My name is Andrew Morello, because my parents didn't want me to have an Italian first name because of how difficult it was growing up there.
Yeah.
My brother is John Orazio Morello. My sister is Elizabeth Mariana Morello. So we were given very Anglo first names because my poor dad, every time we need to go get paperwork sorted, I'm sure this would be the same in the Vietnamese community. It's like one of his the ID says Giovanni, one says John, one says Giovanni Gregorio, one says John Gregorio, one says Giovanni Greg, and it's like they're all different because growing up, they wanted to try and push away from their, ethnicity.
Yeah. You got to do what you got to do for the times, right?
You do to survive, right?
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking that we live in a world that still probably needs to happen to some respects. Like I try and give as many people opportunities as possible.
Yeah.
And when you hear some of the stories of that, the fact that they've gone for 15 job interviews, 20 job interviews, and it's because. And it's still a reality. Like Australia is a beautiful country. It's the land of opportunity. And I tell people, it's the greatest country in the world. And I love the fact that, I get to come back to Australia all the time.
Yeah.
But we're still stuck in some of the old ways.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we are evolving, but there is still work to be done.
Yes, there is still work to be
There
done.
is still work to be done. And anyone listening to this, it comes down to the individual. That's the other big problem that I think that people think it's too big for them to do anything about it. Like they're like, but I treat everyone with respect. But the reality is not just need to treat people with respect. You need to proactively go out there and try and help other people as well.
Yeah, this is true. How would your parents describe you, Andrew?
My mother would, if she was still alive, would call me a ruffiano. And so for those of you who don't know what ruffiano means, it's an Italian word for a suck up. So I had a very, and it's ironic because now I have my beautiful son.
Do you agree?
I do. I agree completely.
Okay.
Because I didn't agree until I had my own son and watch him do it to me.
Yeah, right.
And now I'm like, that's what I used to do. So,
Okay.
So my mother would have called me Orfiano. My dad would have called me relentless.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he, when I was 15, I said, Dad, I'm going to start running nightclubs, underage nightclubs. And he's like, so this is a great thing about my dad. He never said no. He just said, all right, I'm not going to, you've got to go do it on your own. So you go do your business plan. Right. So I drew up this little, with a grey lead in my exercise book. I wrote this little 2-page business plan. I go to my dad. I said, I need $10,000 to get it started.
Yes.
And he's like, I'm not giving you the money.
Yes.
But he didn't say I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not giving you the money. So where are you going to get it from? So I was very, very lucky. When I was 15, I went and got a government grant from the Moonee Valley Council, which is where Moonee Ponds is, to run alcohol and drug-free events for the youth of Moonee Valley. And there was a beautiful lady who I'm still very close friends with, and her family and her kids. I actually emceed her son's wedding, and he's one of my best mates. Carol Espinoza, her name is. So hopefully if she listens to this, she remembers. And she was the woman who gave me my first opportunity. She gave me a $10,000 grant from the council to go and start my first business at 15. So
Which was
Angel
youth-friendly-
Promotions youth underage dance parties.
Amazing.
Yeah. So and ironically, like, you know, people that I met there have stayed in my life. You know, it's been 20 plus years now, and they've stayed in my life since then. And Carol, I was with Carol's son for New Year's Eve, and I spoke to Carol, you know, maybe a month ago. So she's still a part of my life, and so my dad never said you can't do it. He just pushed me to go and find a solution.
Yes.
So he was relentless. Like I said, no, I'm going to get this done, and I did it.
Yeah.
And, you know, most dads would say, you're not going to go run nightclubs. They try and deter you from doing something like that. And my dad's like, okay, if you're going to do it properly.
Yeah. What are some of your fondest memories of those years, of your nightclub time? That's like your first,
Pauline,
first business.
Can I tell you, they are the fondest years of my life.
I can
I
imagine.
would pay a lot of
That's the
money
most
just to go
impressionable
back to those days. It was a beautiful thing. So the mother of my child, I actually met her running those events. So literally 22 years ago. So
Yes.
she was, she was a part of that. Some of my business partners that I still have today in the real estate businesses, in other businesses, companies that I've invested in, are people that I met back then. And it was a very beautiful time of immersion. So you got to remember Melbourne as well. You're talking, what are we talking here? Maybe like 2000, right? So Australia just had the Olympics. There was a lot of energy in Australia. There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of, adventures going on. And it was like, if you were in Melbourne at that time, and you saw the excitement that was happening, it was just this beautiful collaboration of music and events and romance and partying and like we used to wear costumes back then, like we were enjoying life, and then I feel like we've gotten a little bit too serious in today's modern age.
Yeah.
But back then it was there was innocence, there was simplicity, there was uncertainty, but excitement at the same time. And it's a very, very beautiful, romantic thing to be able to be a part of something like that. And still to know someone like some massive names came out of the back of it, like John Corse, one of Australia's biggest DJs came out of the back of it. Carl Cox moved to Australia during that period. He lives in Frankston in Victoria now. This is one of the biggest DJs in the world because he was there during that early 2000s to early to mid 2000 period. And he was a part of that scene that was Melbourne. He moved to Australia. He moved from Ibiza to Frankston, Victoria, which is a very big difference. But obviously, he saw that the excitement and the beauty and the romance that was culturally Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to speak to your spirituality.
Yes.
You are deeply spiritual. I love that. I can feel that. And we've made the distinction that it has very little to do with religion.
Yep.
I believe that spirituality doesn't need religion. I think perhaps religion needs spirituality.
Yeah.
And
that's a beautiful way to put it, actually.
Yeah. And spiritual practices is what the human being and the soul needs to be in spirit and inspired. Who are some of your most profound spiritual teachers? Great
question. So I would argue probably one of the biggest influences that, I'm saddened that I was enlightened by him just after he passed away, because he had just come to Australia supposedly the year before I started, doing my research and reading and listening to a gentleman named Ram Dass.
Yes.
And I feel like Ram Dass is probably one of, in modern spiritual mentors and conduits, let's call it.
I just quoted Ram Dass in my solo.
Oh, you did?
There
we go. Fantastic.
Yeah. We are walking each other home.
Yep.
Yes.
Beautiful. So, Ram Dass is a prime example of, he was a Harvard lecturer, experimented with, psychedelics and was no longer at Harvard, but then that forced him to go and enlighten himself naturally in India and actually go and with his best friend and go on a journey. And I find that the stuff that Ram Dass talks about in the lectures on Here and Now, which is their podcast, which is his recordings from the 70s, which are just beautiful. I'm so glad somebody recorded them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because nobody was doing that back then. Now everybody's recording everything. But in the 70s, it would have been like, 300 people probably in a hall sitting on the floor. You can hear babies crying in the background.
Yeah.
They were probably at hippie communes. They were at formal events. You'd get asked to go speak at big formal events as well and political events. And I think he was a beautiful conduit between the East and the West. And he how he explains things really simplifies it, like, okay, yes, you still need to have a career. Yes, you still need to, drive a car or buy a house or whatever, but you can do it consciously.
Yep.
And you can do it at the same time where you're doing it with, beautiful intent. So it certainly Ramdas, I had an opportunity to spend a few days with Deepak Chopra when he came to Australia. So the 7 Spiritual Laws by Deepak Chopra, he came and did like a 3-day event, and I got sold into the VIP, which I don't mind because I got the experience, got a chance to meet him as well, and actually have some personal conversations. He actually gave me my old Bondi place. I had this beautiful flag, and he gave me the flag at the end of the 3 days. Like, he's like, you've been so great, and you've been this ball of energy, and he gave me this flag, which I've got in my house, which I still have.
Yes.
And then I've had a chance to go and see Eckhart Tolle, and I love a lot of that. And then as well, people that you would never have heard of. As I said, my priest from when I was growing up. My some of my friends. Like the conversation that we had the other night, like that was very spiritually nourishing as well, because it's like I sit here and see you as a very successful person, and I say, okay, well, if you're constantly on that journey, and I think that's the big thing that people need to understand, it is a journey, not a destination. Yeah. Like, I am not some enlightened being. I have plenty of days where things are tough, plenty of times of impatience. Just coming here, just then I got stuck behind a garbage truck, and I said, isn't it ironic? I knew that we were going to talk about spiritualism, and this down that laneway just then, this garbage truck just kept on stopping and stopping and stopping, and I'm just like...
I was behind a garbage truck this morning.
Yeah,
you know what I did?
you go.
I went onto the other lane. Other lane, oncoming traffic, back in
Pauline,
my lane.
if I could have, I would have. I would have if I could have, but it's that little laneway behind here.
Hey, do you apply, or do you think that a lot of your entrepreneurship is influenced by your spirituality as a spiritual entrepreneur?
I would hope. I would hope that anyone who gets to spend time with me and get to know the real Morello, they would say that every time I make a decision around business and entrepreneurialism, it always has a conscious undertone. So, like, at the end of the day, if there was an opportunity to make money, but he was going to disadvantage a particular group of people or persons, I wouldn't do it, because, from a karma point of view, from a Dharma yoga point of view, like, I would be like, it's contradicting my values, right? So I think the spiritualism always has a strong undertone. Yeah. Probably more now. Like I look at now that that I am a father, and I think more than ever I have a responsibility to be some sort of a role model. I certainly don't think I'm the best perfect father or the a perfect partner to be with or anything like that. So I'm not sitting here claiming to be found perfection. But I think I always try and go into and go, okay, well, if Lion was old enough to see what the decision I'm making, would he be proud? Because I can't remember a time when I saw my father make a business decision that I wasn't proud of.
Yes.
So, like, I had this great role model. I look at my brother, who's probably the best father and the best husband and one of the best business people I know, and he, is a great role model for his 2 daughters, and they've become superstars because of it. So, but we're all on the journey. Like, I sit my brother down sometimes, and hopefully he listens to this, and I'll put it on the record. I always say, be careful you don't turn into some of you. He picks up some of my dad's traits, being the oldest son. Yeah. Like, he every now and then he does become his own worst enemy, and his wife and I gang up on him and tell him that he needs to change some of the ways he does things. And he's gotten into his spirituality now. He's meditating twice a day, which is something he'd never done before in his life. So he's taken that up, which is good. And I'm sending him little podcasts to listen to, and once again, it's a journey. Like, he's a very financially, mentally, in the physical realm, like, he's very successful. He's a great father, successful children. My nieces are top rowers at their school. They're A+ students. Like I said, he's produced this great environment of excellence, but I try and pressure him, and that's what a brother's job's to do. And he gives me a hard time about things too, to go and get focused back on his internal, which he's doing now.
Which makes us whole.
He does indeed, And I said to him, like, at the end of the day, like, he's got this beautiful goal now that he wants to at 50 years old, he wants to take his wife and go traveling for a year because he's never had the opportunity to do that because he's always been tied to his businesses and so forth. So I said, great, let's plan to do that. But like, if you want to do that, let's not talk about it as a pipe dream. Let's talk about it as it can be a reality. But if you want to do that, then you need to be able to learn to let go. You know, like right now, he's still very entrenched in his business, you know, and he says he doesn't love it, but you see when he does a deal at 11 o'clock at night, he gets that excitement. Like, I remember he still sometimes calls me when he finishes doing a deal, and I'm like, why is he calling me? Is something wrong with Dad? You know, when Mum wasn't well, like I thought something's wrong, and I answered, and he's like, I just walked out of this, you know, this listing, or I walked out of this, you know, this deal, and you know, everybody thought it couldn't be done, and I did it. And I said, this is where I love hearing the brilliance that comes from him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's his own worst enemy, and his wife would be the first one to talk about that. She's like, you know, he gets in his own head, and that's human beings. I think we all do.
Yeah. Just at his stage of life, his stage of development. What I'm hearing more and more, Andrew, is that your spirituality and this deep inner knowing of who the fuck you are gives you the competitive edge in entrepreneurship.
Yep.
And, you know, has you win things like The Apprentice as the underdog and receive all the success that you've received in business and in life. Right. What are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of my son.
Yeah.
You know, like,
let's talk about Lion.
I know, like, you know, it's.
I want to hear how you got his name.
Okay, so just for the record, Keneal, his mother, actually chose the name.
Yes.
So the initial, the first part, I actually suggested Marcello and Caesar, and then so Marcello because my name is Andrew Morello, so after my grandfather, and so I always said to my mother, I would have loved to have been called Marcello Morello.
Yes.
Just has a nice ring to it.
You still have the opportunity to change
just
your name.
Cut Andrew off. Correct. Well, everyone calls him Morello now anyway. So
Otherwise
I've become like Cher. I've become like Cher anyway. So, so she goes to me, I don't like those names. They're too ethnic. And I said, well, what have you got? And I was waiting for her to give me like David or John. You know, my brother's John or my dad's John. I was waiting for that. She turns around and she says, Lion. And my response is, oh, that is very Morello. Like, Lion was just very Morello. But I said, we can do better. We can do better. So the mother of my child, she's got big, long, curly hair. For those who know me from back in the day when I wear my hair out, I've got big, long, curly hair. Lion's inherited, like, you know, we didn't know he was going to, but he inherited these big curls as well. So he's got long, curly hair as well.
What colour is his hair?
He's got blonde hair.
Yeah, right.
So he looks identical to my baby photo, but I've got mousy brown hair and he's got blonde hair. So we were both Keneal and I were both fair when we were young. So, and then I turned, you know, more darker features later on. But I said to Keneal, we can do better. So we went from Lion to Lion Mane, which was like LIONMANE, is in like the lion's mane and the mushroom, and it was very and Keneal liked that, I liked that, but I said we can do even better. So we actually settled on Lion Mane, as in LIONMAIN, as in Lion, the main man Morello.
Yeah, the main man Morello.
The main event. So,
cool.
So we've either set him up for absolute amazingness
the king.
or absolute disaster. He's either going to be a superstar or he's going to be a rat bag. So one of the two, but I think he's going to be the superstar.
I reckon he's going to be the superstar.
He's got some great role models. His mother does an amazing job. You know, you talk about the nurture. She's very much the mother that I had.
Yeah, awesome.
And he does art class on Mondays. He does swimming lessons Tuesdays. You know, we do beach on Wednesdays. We do cultural appreciation Thursdays. We do art class. No, we do Spanish on Fridays now. Yep. So it's like this kid, you know, so my mother was like that. I did Taekwondo. I did soccer at Brunswick Zebras. I did Taekwondo at Horse Taekwondo, who was the Australian coach for the Olympic team where Lauren Burns, I trained with Lauren Burns growing up. You know, Australia's first gold medal in Taekwondo was a beautiful woman and a strong, powerful, matriarchal woman for the sport. You know, so Lauren's an amazing woman. Someone you should get onto here. I think Lauren's amazing, would be amazing for you. You know, I did public speaking, Vintuck public speaking. I did debating. I did chess club.
Yeah.
And my mum never complained. You know, she had 3. At one time, she was on the Mother's Auxiliary or the Parent-Teacher Board for 3 different schools. St. Monica's, St. Bernard's and Ave Maria all at one time. She did volunteering at the church. She did volunteering in the library. She did volunteering in the tuck shop. and she never complained.
Yeah.
Never once did she go, oh, I got to pick him up from Taekwondo, I got to take it. And Keneal's very much the same with Lion. She's an amazing mother, and I'm very, very lucky to have a beautiful mother for my son.
I reckon he's got a pretty cool dad too.
That's the 20% I keep telling her. So she's the 80%, I'm the 20%. But he's a Morello. He's Lion made Morello. So that 20% is very domineering. So, and it's funny because I feel bad sometimes because he still is this mini Morello. Like we just went away to the Sunshine Coast, and he was getting a bit restless in the restaurant. I took him for a walk down the street, and he literally was going door to door. He's 1 year old, still turning 2 in a month's time, and he's literally going door to door and giving people hugs and kisses.
Yeah, just like his dad.
I know. And this woman's just like, that is definitely your son. And I'm like, I know. And Keneal always says it as well. And people that have known, obviously, as I said, I've known Keneal for 22 years now. And so people that have known her and I, they're just growing up, they're just like, oh my God, that is Morello through and through. So even though she does all the nurturing, that nature still is very, very strong in him.
So good. I look forward to watching him grow up.
Correct. So as they say, what is it? What does Luke Skywalker say? The Yoda says the Force is very strong in him. It is. The Morello is very strong in him. So
he's gonna have a good life.
Which is good. Yeah. Or when I die, I want to come back as him. I tell him that every day. So when I die, I want to come back as Lion Mane Morello.
Oh,
so
bless you and bless him. Who do you look up to the most?
Definitely, I've been very, very blessed. And I know a lot of people that are listening to this that haven't been blessed with it. So I understand, and I've got some amazing friends that have had great lives, but they didn't necessarily have a beautiful environment growing up. So first and foremost, I would say my mum and dad and my brother and my sister, I've had a great role model. My mother was the matriarch of our family. My father was this, very moral and, very
integral.
This beautiful man of integrity, honourable. People would come from all over to spend time with. I remember Christmas time. Every night he'd bring home boxes full of gifts for us, for my mum. I remember walking down the street in Puckle Street, Moonee Ponds, and the guy that owns the fish shop bringing boxes of fish out for my mum for free, and boxes of meat. And we go to the Moonee Ponds market, and the guy Mick and Michael at the fruit and veg place would give my mum all this free stuff because of the relationship they had with my father and our family. So I was very, very lucky to grow up in a family like that. And my sister, she works in the philanthropic space. She's raised millions of dollars for charity. So having these strong, powerful women around me forced me to have this strong, I would call masculine feminine energy, which was a beautiful thing. And then from a personal point of view, Geraldine Cox would certainly be up there. Obviously my time with Mark, he was 10 years, literally he was like a second father to me. We traveled all over together, 2-3 flights a week, so we got to have a lot of big conversations. So obviously Mark's still important. We were just recently in Newcastle together, so he's a big part of my life. And then last but not least, I think ironically, the kids in Cambodia, I know you're friends with Geraldine, some of the biggest inspiration I've ever gotten is from going over there for a month at a time and working with these kids running entrepreneurial programs. So I don't know if you know the model, but so if anyone's sort of listening to this and wants to know more information, it's called Project Gen Z. And what we do is we take entrepreneurs from Australia, or from all over. We've had people from the US and UK, but predominantly Australia, and a lot of them are Entourage members or previous members, alumni. And we take them over, then we run entrepreneur programs, but we run an apprentice challenge.
Yeah, right.
So what we do is we put them into teams, and then instead of an individual winning initially, the team wins. Then in the team, an individual wins, and then what we do is the individual gets their education paid for 4 years at a US underpinned university in Phnom Penh. So basically in Cambodia, if you go to a Khmer university, it's not worth the paper it's written on. Nobody accepts a Khmer degree anywhere. So if you want to ever get out of, Cambodia, or at least get a good job in Cambodia, you need to have a US-based university degree. So what we do is we send them to a US-based business school over there. Or they can take the money and go start a business. So basically we give them money, we raise money over here and we take it over there. And Geraldine and I basically are the Mark Boris in that situation. So we get to choose who's going to win. And we've had major success. So one of them actually has moved to Australia, and she's started a life here. She's gone and studied here, and now she's got a great job here. And so it's a beautiful thing. And her and her brother were rescued from terrible things. You know, a lot of those kids are rescued from child prostitution, begging circles. They're abandoned by their family because their family don't, like, you know, we can sit here in Australia, the second wealthiest country per capita, and judge these parents for doing some of the things that they've done, but nobody actually understands what it's like to go and be back in a village and have 5 children, not be able to provide for any of them, and then somebody feeds you some bullshit that we're going to take your daughter and, you know, we're going to give her a new life. It's still happening. It's still happening right now. You know, like, you know, and this is what upsets me. Like, you know, when you speak to people in Australia and they're upset, like, I'm not undermining or dismissing people's, you know, life experiences in Australia, but, you know, I've got staff and friends and family that will complain about, like, them and their girlfriend breaking up, and I'm like, I know it's bad, and I agree that it's a terrible thing, but
there's a bigger picture.
It's not that bad. Like, I'm like, you know, we live in Australia. You can get on your apps or whatever now. I'm sure you can find someone. Oh, but I'm heartbroken. I'm like, I'm not denying you're heartbroken. I'm not dismissing that, but you need to put it into perspective with what's going on in your life. Yeah.
The busy man that you are, I really respect that you carve out time for the contribution piece. The spirituality piece, the partying, the fun piece,
always
the father piece, the business entrepreneurship piece, and always giving back. I love that about you, and I want to acknowledge and commend you and respect for that. What do you spend most of your time doing these days? What takes up most of the time in your day?
Yeah, so obviously you've had Jack on here as well, haven't you?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, well, we need to get Jack on here for you then. So Jack's been one of my best mates. You know, we've been, you know, one of the best mates now for 12, nearly 13 years. We've travelled all over the world together. Went to the Monaco Grand Prix together.
For the listeners, Jack is Jack Delosa.
Jack Delosa, correct. Yes. You know, the founder of the Entourage. So I'm very, very blessed to you know, be a part of that business, and it's actually a really good balance for me because it gives me an opportunity to be at the cold face and actually, you know, to really help business owners reach their full potential and not waste their precious life. Number one. Number two, I get to be at the cold face where I get to influence them around their spirituality and their growth. And then last but not least, you know, do the fun stuff, take them from 6 figures to 7 figures and 7 figures to 8 figures, right? So, like, the money's great, but I tell them, you know, let's get all the other things right and the money will come. It's a reality, right? So, and taking them through that entrepreneurial journey from technician to manager, manager to leader, leader to entrepreneur. So I get to do that.
It brings me back to what you said over dinner, was that life is all about the people you meet and what you can create with them, and creating meaningful things with people who have meaning. That's good. I have 2 last fun questions for you, Andrew.
I could do this all day.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, great. We'll do another extended 12-hour version one day over some wine and tea. Tea and wine, tea and wine.
If you were to have a movie made about you,
yes,
who would play you?
Oh, that is a great question. That is a great question. Because there's my ego that wants to say a certain
Tell
actor.
us that one.
So when I was growing up, interestingly enough, and I know, and it's saddened me that his career hasn't continued to flourish, but I was a big Vince Colosimo fan.
Oh, yes.
Massive Vince Colosimo fan.
He's so good.
And he's a Melbourne boy. He's from eastern suburbs. I was from the northwest. You know, our families sort of quasi knew each other. Interestingly enough, some colourful characters that we were both mutual friends with. So we ended up doing some events together.
Yep.
So I emceed some events and he emceed them as well. Then I did the charity auctions and stuff like that. And interestingly enough, if you Google my name, Andrew Morello, one of the things that comes up is Vince Colosimo, MDA. A friend of ours wrote the script for an ABC television show called MDA. It was about doctors and nurses and the mischief that they get up to on the ABC. And the main character was Vince Colosimo, and he was Dr. Andrew Morello. Has that for craziness. And growing up, I was a massive fan of him. Yeah. And then I ended up, you know, obviously partying with him, and then he played Dr. Andrew Morello. And my girlfriend at the time was Lucy Tucker, and his wife in the show was Dr. Lucy Morello.
What?
So it was just very, 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 very funny. So we had some mates.
That's what I was like, I'm seeing timelines. Maybe that's the future.
Coming
back to the...
Who knows? It all falls back on itself. So so it was Vince Colosimo growing up, and I did. It's bad that I've actually thought about that, but my ego would say Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay. Awesome.
like I look, he's without a doubt probably my favourite actor.
He
just has a lot of style,
such a good actor,
class, and
the craft, the mastery.
He's
of the
amazing
craft.
at it. Amazing at it. One of the things I wish I had done when they filmed The Great Gatsby. Obviously, he lived in Manly at the time, and supposedly he'd go out all the time on like Fridays and Saturday nights. And I feel like if I had met him, we would have been mates.
Yeah.
I feel like supposedly he used to go out and just sit at a bar on his own.
Yeah.
Right. So he didn't go with security and all that. And I feel like if I actually went out and I saw him, I would have bought him a drink, and then we would have been mates. And then he really could have played Andrew Morello. So there we go.
That could still be a possibility.
It could still be a possibility. Let's see.
One last question.
Yes.
As we're drinking Tiger Purrr, what makes Andrew Morello purr?
Oh, great question. Great question. I think the biggest thing that makes me purr is the people that I get to spend time with.
Yeah.
Often, like you talk about who would play me in a movie, like I'm not saying this in a hubris or an arrogant way, but like, I come back often from traveling, either speaking on tour or going on some adventure or traveling somewhere overseas. And as I mentioned, like, I've gone to the Monaco Grand Prix, I've been to Burning Man, I've been to Coachella with Sam and Stewie, so I've gone and done all these amazing adventures. And often people will come and say to me, your life is like a movie.
Yeah.
Right? They will say that.
Yes.
Like, they're like, it's
It
literally
is.
like a movie, right? So I feel very lucky and very privileged. It does make me purr. It does turn me on. It gets me excited. Like, what is the next adventure? Like, I've got a whole bunch of things coming up. I'm actually speaking at a festival in Melbourne called Festival 23, which is a collaboration of artists in Australia, environmentalists. Basically, there's lectures during the day from business people, motivational people, environmentalists, and artists. Amazing. And then at night, everyone parties and has a good time. And it's in a winery in the regional part of Victoria. It's like I get to go do that for 3 days.
Yeah.
And swim in the dam and swim in the pool and get to have great conversations and experience things that most people probably never get to experience.
So what makes Andrew Morello purr is the deliciousness of life and the joy for existence.
Can we put that on a bumper sticker? I just finished reading Green Lights with Matthew McConaughey, and it's like everything's about a bumper sticker. So I think we should put that on a bumper sticker. That's what makes Andrew Morello purr.
Thank you so much for today.
My pleasure.
The joy has been mine.
The joy has been more mine. So fantastic. I look forward to our 12-hour extended version. Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was so good.